All right, everybody, welcome. Thanks for coming early on the first day of the show. My name is Rich Katzmann. This is Ed Young. We've got a quick slide with our background here, but we're going to get really quickly into benchmarking. We're going to start with why benchmark, how to benchmark, and then we're going to share some really good numbers with you that are interesting. So we're going to zip through everything in about a half an hour. And Ed, let's get some...
Yeah, and we'll leave a little time for questions at the end as well.
All righty. So,
Super.
Ed, why don't you give a little bit about your background?
I was born at a very early age, and it's been all downhill since then. Background in lots of industries, over 20 years in this industry, helped start up the DuPont program back a little over 20 years ago, and just really enjoy working with the folks who own and run their own business. It's a lot of fun.
Sure. And as I said, my name's Rich. I run the Rockheads Group. If anybody's familiar with the Rockheads, we are a collection of countertop fabricators. We consider them the best of the best. And what the group provides is best practices, discounted pricing, rebates from vendor programs, and benchmarking is one of our core benefits of being in the group. So some of the data I'm going to share with you all is from our most recent benchmarking analysis. And prior to that, I worked at Laser Products, who's over there somewhere. So let's get into it.
Sounds good.
All right, so when we talk about benchmarking, right, we always call it a strategic tool. It's not a bunch of data. You want to sit down or you want to stand?
I'm good. Either way, I just was moving my water.
The key to benchmarking is not getting the report and throwing it up in your bookshelf and never looking at it again. And the way we handle that at the Rockheads is we will collect data from all of our members, we will process metrics, we will compare those metrics to comparable companies, and that's just the start though. From there, you've got to look and see where you're underperforming, where you're overperforming, so that you can do something about it, right? And so that's the main purpose, is not to put it on a shelf, right? It's to use that data, it's to call your network, come to events like this, and try to improve what you're looking at.
Yeah, when you get a number, when you do your benchmarking and you get a number and you're comparing your number to whoever you're benchmarking against, their number, or you're comparing it to Rockheads aggregated data, that's just the start. A lot of folks think, okay, well, here's my benchmark, here's where I compare, all right, next. What you want to do is take that data and do a much deeper dive, and we'll talk about that more in some future slides.
And it's amazing where at different revenue levels of companies, the metrics all change, right? As you get bigger, your net profit as a percent of revenue may actually go down. And that's expected, and that's okay. So there are definitely some inflection points as your company grows in, say, for example, how much you're spending in your facility, how much you're spending on capital equipment, how much you're spending with SG&A employees. So you've got to watch where you are and where you want to be, and then measure against that. All right, we're going to blow through these pretty quickly, right? Benchmarking cuts through subjective, right? These are numbers. You're not saying, I wish you were a little better. I wish we templated for a little bit less. I mean, you are seeing the numbers, right? And that leads to accountability. When you can sit down with employees and direct reports and your staff and say, look, this is what I'm holding you to. Why are these guys here and you're here? It allows you then to make them accountable for that.
One of the great things about data is if you use it right, it helps take the emotion out of the process. You may be familiar with a podcast I did some years back for Aaron Crowley called Sacred Cows Make the Best Hamburger. People get too emotionally wrapped up in their business and they don't think about objectively why we're doing what we're doing, objectively how do we compare with others. Use the data to help take the emotion out of the process.
Love it, love it. Yep, and accountable people, I skipped through it. Accountable people like numbers, right? They want to be gauged on something real, not something subjective.
Yeah, and if you've got people who are making lots of excuses for why your numbers aren't as good as who you're benchmarking against, it should be a red flag on your folks.
Yeah.
Big indicator of culture fit or lack thereof.
Yeah, yeah. Next one, clarity and commitment, right? Kind of along the same lines. Can't argue a number's a number, so that's where you get the clarity of things, right? And competition. Right, numbers create competition. We see this all the time. I've got a neat story in a shop up in Michigan where all they did was they bought a bunch of monitors, and they put the amount of square foot their installers did on a rolling week, month, per day, per week, whatever, and immediately the installation times got quicker and quicker and quicker, right? Didn't have to do anything, didn't incent the guy with the best, but just the staff seeing what others were doing immediately created a little positive competition.
Yep. That's the thing too about, if you want to grow your business, you want to be successful, want to be profitable, you need high performers in key positions. This particular statement really speaks to high performers. They like the competition, they like the data, they like the feedback, they like the accountability.
And obviously numbers produce results, right? We're looking at things that are important that add to your profit, to your bottom line. And numbers create teamwork also, right? Another, something that's sometimes overlooked, but if everybody's shipping, sailing the same way, right, it's going to automatically create teamwork.
Yep, because we all know what goal we're shooting for, we all know where we are and what we need to do to get to that next level. If we're measuring on a metric that is a team metric, now we're working together to hit that metric.
Whoop. And you solve problems faster, right? With benchmarking, you know exactly where the issue is, you go and you attack it. Right? If you are looking at, again, my gross margin is 5% less than I think it should be, what's contributing to that? With a good benchmark, you're going to know exactly which element of your gross margin or your sales, general, administrative costs or your material costs, whatever it is, the benchmarking is going to help point you in the right direction and get it fixed faster. All righty, so I'm going to share some data with you that, again, this is from the Rockhead members, generally a little bit larger than the average shop. You can see from this, the members that filled out this benchmarking report were just over $13 million in average revenue. You can see the bands evenly spread across the country. And the way we do it at the Rockheads is everybody submits it secretly. Nobody ever sees the company name with the data, and then everything gets aggregated. So there's never a time where one shop knows what the other shop's numbers are. Now, after the process, if a shop calls and says, hey, my install numbers are a little slower, a little more expensive, who do you have in your group that does it extremely well? We'll share that information with them so that they can get better, but they'll never have individual numbers. And so just a couple of things. Our group, again, with the Rockheads, a little bit slanted towards big box. I just want to show you this so that when you see the numbers, you kind of have a good idea of why they are where they are. But after the big box, everything's pretty even between retail, track builders, dealers, resellers, custom, and commercial. It's all spread out across all those categories. One thing we saw right away, and I think everybody knows this is a pretty common one, quartz is dominating the industry still, right? If you look at us, 62% quartz, 30-ish% natural stone. So still quartz. Let Nick do that. Absolutely. All right, so the first thing we do in our benchmarking is we want to see if the shops are charging their customers what they could be. I don't want to say what they should be, but what they could be. So we will break down the average price sold to a customer across all different categories. So within the Rockheads, across the country, big companies, small companies, the average sale price to a consumer is just under 80 bucks a foot, right? So that's a big number that everybody should look at.
Quick question. How many members in the Rockheads Group? So we know what the sample size looks like.
Fantastic. Good question. We have 118 members in the Rockheads. Okay. 71 participated in the benchmarking. So it does give us a good ability to kind of chop things up.
It's good, yep.
All right, again, big box, right? Lower, right? If the average price is just under 80, obviously we're making less money with the big box or less revenue with the big box. Production builders, right? The lowest of all of our categories. Track builders, in, out, lots of square footage, 60 bucks a foot. Custom builders, now it starts to get interesting, right? Now we're up to 90 bucks a foot, basically, for custom builders across the country. Interesting number. Commercial projects, right? Everybody thinks a lot of times you've got to go low on a commercial deal. No, at 84 bucks, you can make a lot of money on a commercial project.
And if you're one of these shops that's got a really quick turn from template to install, and you really have a high percentage of hitting your promised install dates, your promised template dates, commercial folks want to pay more for that because they understand the value of that better than I would say a lot of contractors.
Yeah, yeah. Designers, dealers, resellers, right? Over 90 bucks a foot. Makes sense, right? Higher end customer, higher price that you're making from them. And then your walk-in business is the highest, right? Almost 100 bucks a foot for someone who walks in. And a little bit later, Ed and I are going to have another quick conversation about diversification of customers. Why diversify and how to do it effectively, because it's tough. You know, I mean, obviously installing at a track builder is a lot different than a high-end builder, right? And a commercial project is going to be a lot different than a big box project. So we're going to share some insights on not only why you should diversify, which I think is obvious to most people, but some tips on how to do it.
Yep.
All right, what do you do with this, right? You analyze your current prices. You set pricing goals for your sales force. Maybe you bonus them on it. And you determine which sector you may want to funnel more efforts into. Do you want to hire a commercial sales manager? Do you want to expand your showroom? Do you want to try to pick up those 10 big box stores that Depot's been asking you for?
And part of that involves looking at yourself and saying, okay, where do I fit compared to my competition in my geographic area? Because that'll tell you where some of those opportunities are. And again, we'll talk about that more. I think it's after lunch.
Yeah.
We're talking about diversification. Yeah.
All right, let's get into some more good numbers, right? So now we're getting into some cost of goods sold. Total cost of goods sold, 48 bucks a foot, or 62% of your revenue, right? Good number to know. This has been a Rockhead stable number for a while. Even with the material costs going up over the last few years and the supply chain issues, we tend to be right around this 60 to 65% number. Materials, 37.7. Last year or the year before, we saw materials pop up over 40% for kind of the first time. And we had a whole bunch of our members who were over 40%. And really the reason was they couldn't adjust to the fluctuations from the suppliers, right? A price change would come in, they had already bid out jobs or they were slow to implement it, and they would now get stuck with low margin jobs because the materials went up so quickly.
That's where commercial can really be a challenge and retail can be a blessing at times. Watching this one single number, your materials as a percent of sales, probably one of the biggest things that I see shops miss, especially the last few years. You're just not used to doing it.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't had to like we have the last 4 years.
You got to get those price increases in right away, and you got to put 60 days on your commercial jobs or whatever
At
that
least.
number is.
Yeah.
Even today, we're seeing freight just insane these days. I mean, the fluctuations there are huge also. Sinks and faucets, you know, not a big percent, you know, 1.5%, but direct labor. Now, this is one you can really control, right? So fab, install, template, CAD programming, 23% of this, or 18 bucks a foot, right? And that's a number that, you know, when you're approached, maybe someone wants you to do all the labor, they're supplying the materials, you should really know what your number is to get a piece of slab out and get it installed.
Yeah. And obviously that number gets impacted a lot by how automated you are and what type of work you do. This number will be lower if you're doing a lot of production builder work or if you're doing a lot of multifamily type work that's cookie cutter. If you're doing a lot of high-end commercial work, you'll see a difference in this number. So that's, again, when you get the number on the benchmarking, doing a deeper dive into what's behind it, who are you comparing yourself to, what kind of business are they in, what area of the country, those types of things are important to understand why your number may vary.
Love it, love it. T-dollars. We are all starting to hear about T-dollars these days. Ed, you want to share what T-dollars are?
Yeah, essentially that's your sales price for your job minus the costs that vary with each additional square foot or each additional kitchen. The biggest one of those is materials, sinks and faucets, and then if you have any contract labor, you have 1099 installers, that will vary as well. Think about if I put out a 60 square foot kitchen versus 65 square foot kitchen, what costs vary to produce that, and direct labor is not one of those. Your supplies don't vary directly with that. If I put out 6 kitchens today versus 7 kitchens per day, what costs are going to vary?
What to do with this, right? Negotiate and evaluate your pricing, right? We've got a couple of, there's one over there, Eric. Wave hi to everybody. Eric is a dull tile Everstone guy, has amazing advice on how to negotiate with your suppliers because he's been a supplier for 20 years, whether it's materials that are going out, end of year deals, quarterly specials. He's an expert in getting your material prices down. So Eric's a great resource for that. Look at ways to compensate your installers, your templators differently, right? There's lots of different compensation programs out there. We see a lot of shops now, what they'll do is they'll set aside bonus money, and if a templater finishes a quarter and doesn't make any mistakes, that bonus money goes to them. If they make one mistake, it notches down. Same thing with the install, right? Just trying to drive down remakes because they're so expensive. So there's a lot of creative ways where you can now tie the workers, the people that are making the product, with the numbers.
A lot of folks will stop with their incentives with some sort of pay based on volume. How much did I get done today? How many installs? How many square feet did I produce? Thing to remember when you use money to drive behaviors. When you use money to drive behavior, you get what you pay for. You will primarily get only what you pay for. That's why adding what Rich just said about a quarterly bonus that's tied to quality helps balance that out. You won't get just production and low quality. Now you got a better chance of getting both.
Yeah. All right, just some more charts, some more numbers. Right, so this again is the Rockhead Group. Gross margin is what we live and die by, right? So you can look at this, maybe figure where your shop fits into this. You can see kind of the bell curve, that 35 to 45 is the sweet spot for where your shops, should be, but they can be as high as 55%, as we do have a couple of shops doing that.
One of the challenges, gross margin you got to have. It's part of GAAP accounting, generally accepted accounting principles. You got to have that for bankers, for lenders, and for all sorts of other purposes, taxes, et cetera. But when you start trying to analyze gross margin by a market segment, analyze gross margin by a customer, compare one contractor to another, gross margin is tough to wield at that level. When you get down to those finite levels, or what was my profit yesterday, how much profit have I scheduled for tomorrow, that's where throughput dollars and operating expense dollars get to be much more manageable, give you a better picture. They fall in that group of things that Rick and I talk about called management accounting metrics. So that's where throughput and operating expense can help you a lot and make some of this type of analysis a lot easier.
Again, same idea. What do you do with this, right? Now you're evaluating all your pricing, all your material costs, all your labor, right? Again, it's a little bigger category. Gross margin goals for next year are huge. When you're sitting down planning out the next year, you've got to put a dart in the dartboard as to where you want your gross margin to be and then track against it.
So quick show of hands, how many of you have goals, business goals for this year, specific numerical business goals? You got them written down? How many of you, your key people in your business, know what those goals are and their role in helping make those happen? If you don't have all of what I just asked you about, you're missing a huge, powerful driver in your business. And that's where these numbers get to be really helpful because now you know where to set those for your business.
All right, just some generic numbers here. We're just about at the end of this, so then we'll definitely open it up for questions. One of my favorite metrics across our industry, it was started by Peter DeCock, who was the founder of Grand Courts. He would walk into a shop, he would look at it, and he would ask how many employees you have. And then he would ask, how much revenue did you do last year? And the magic number that he found, and that the Rockheads finds now, is that you should be $200,000 of revenue for every employee. So if you got 10 employees, you should be a $2 million business. If you got 7 employees, you can do the math, right? So this is a key number that has been around for 30 years, 40 years, and still works. Within the Rockheads Group, we range from 170, and then we've got a couple of outliers, in the 300s. But if you were to look at a chart, almost everybody is in that 190 to 220 range. So make sure your business is staffed appropriately with this number.
So one of the questions I can think people may have about this is if I'm doing primarily multifamily commercial work, big box and production builder work, should I expect to still see that number?
No, it definitely varies
Okay.
based on if you're dominant in one segment.
All right. So it
Yeah.
depends on what type of a mix you've got in terms of the market segments that you serve will have some impact on this number.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Material costs, you got to be under 38%. And across the Rockheads, our smallest shops to our largest shops, it didn't matter their size, they all had the ability to get down low. So make sure you're not over 40% still. Hopefully that was just a one-year blip and that everything's coming back down again.
The shops that I've been monitoring this metric with for the past 4 years, for walk-in retail work, typical retail job, materials only as a percent of sales, not looking at sinks or anything else, but materials as a percent of sales, 30% is kind of that average. I see a few of them that are as low as 25%. I see if you're up around 35%, you're still okay. But if you're starting to hit 35, you're going 40. I have seen shops that are 50% for walk-in retail work. That means you've not kept up with your material cost increases. And the problem is in the last few years, everybody understood it and they're more ready to accept those price increases on your side. Now with the economy getting a little bit tighter for some folks, your opportunity to take advantage of that's starting to go away. So if you're at this number or higher, you need to make some changes quickly.
Yeah. Great, that's good, that's good. Gross margin we talked about, right, 35%. Did you have any additional thoughts on that?
Nope.
And my favorite, right, EBITDA, which essentially is profit, how much your business is generating. That's the number that someone who's looking to buy your business will multiply to pay. I mean, this is the key number in your business as far as how profitable you are. And there's a couple of benchmarks across that number that are important. Our industry at 5 to 6%, so this is the entire industry, is low relative to the rest of the world. As we all know, it's a tough industry. At 5 to 6% EBITDA, when the market slows, you're generally not able to spit out as much cash to keep the business going. So you've really got to drive your EBITDA up into double digits to be able to sustain a year-long, 2-year-long depression in the market. So look at your EBITDA. It's very achievable to get up into 10%, up into 17%. It's all very doable. It's easy for me to say, right? It's all doable, but make sure you know what your EBITDA is because it really will help you plan for the future. Strong EBITDA, you don't have to worry as much. Tight EBITDA, you've got to be ready for downturns. You've got to be ready for a builder to walk, to lose some big box. All of those things you've got to be ready for.
And, you know, Rich, this is obviously one of Rich's favorite terms. Is it our next session we're doing M&A? Or is it after lunch?
I don't know.
I can't remember. Okay. When you're doing more than one, it's tough to keep them straight. We'll talk a lot more about EBITDA. We'll do a deeper dive into that and how that impacts what you can sell your business for at some point. It's either the next session or it's the one after lunch. I can't remember which. Yep. And it's not, I'm seeing more and more shops these days, well-run shops, 15 to 20% is not uncommon if you're a well-run shop. You can get there, and I've seen some higher. So if you're down around that industry average of about 5 to 10, you got some upside you can go get. We'll talk in both diversification and in the M&A part about how you can go after that. And obviously benchmarking can give you some good ways to start looking at how you can start to increase that today for yourself.
Yeah. And Ed, I think that,
Oops, go back to that.
There we go.
So this QR code serves two purposes. Rich has got some phenomenal data up here. Rockheads does a great job benchmarking. One of the things I talk to clients about is if you're not a member, call Rich and see if you can get in. Depending on where you are geographically, you may or may not be able to. This is a huge benefit, this benchmark data. If you want a copy of this presentation, hit that QR code and you'll have two opportunities. One is to download a copy of the presentation. We'll ask for your email so we know where to send it, okay? The other is, we know that we covered a lot of data. It's going to be tough to answer all your questions in the time that we've got here today. So we've scheduled a free webinar next month on benchmarking. We'll do a quick review of this session, and the rest of the webinar is just to answer your questions. We're not selling anything. We're not pushing memberships. This is just information for your benefit. So if you're interested in attending that free webinar, hit the QR code and sign up for that as well.
Beautiful. And that's the end of the presentation. We've got time left, so if there's any questions out there, there's a mic, I think, because we're recording things.
Yep.
If you want to chat about anything in particular.
Yeah, we covered a lot real quick. We know we threw a lot at you. So any questions you've got, we're happy to try to field for you. Don't be bashful. This is not a shy industry. We know that. And we know we didn't answer all your questions. Hopefully we sparked a few. It's a quiet group. Must be because it's Monday,
early.
I guess.
It's Monday morning.
Early on Monday. We're going to repeat this tomorrow.
Yep.
Not at the same time, different time, right?
Afternoon.
Yep, afternoon. So if you want to come back and hear the same thing again, or if you come up with some questions, Rich will be hanging out at the Rockheads booth. I'll be in this area most of today and tomorrow. So if you don't have any questions right now, we'll be happy to talk with you later.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I'm getting a bunch of questions right now on people that are not sure their exit strategy and they want to know the next steps. And I think a lot of them are making mistakes on how to prep their business for a potential sale or acquisition. Can you talk through, because I get about 10 of those every week on different boards.
Sure.
Wow, what a great straight man, huh?
You want it or I want it?
Go ahead.
So the question was, if you're thinking about selling your business, what should you be doing, preparing for that to happen? And none of it's overnight. It generally takes 3 years for you to get your business from where it is today to, say, maximizing the value of the business. And so that was Eric's question, is what do we do? We have a full half hour on that twice, later today and tomorrow, that talks about procedures and org charts and you name it, all of the things that need to be done to increase the value of your business. Because in simple math, that EBITDA number we talked about, right? Say your company's generating $1 million a year in profit at the end of the day. That an acquirer will look at and they'll say, I'll either give you 4 times that number, $4 million, here's your check. Or if you've done some of the right things, you can drive that up to 7, 8 times. So now you're looking at $8 million, right? So there's, as much as we work on getting our profit numbers going, there's also another side to that, is how do I get my multiples going? And that's what we're going to talk about at that later session.
And that session today, I wasn't checking email, I just checked my calendar. That's at 1 o'clock this afternoon.
Okay.
So right back here at 1 o'clock today, and then we're going to do it again tomorrow. But great question, Eric, because the real question boils down to, what is your business? Is it a lifestyle, or is it a vehicle to help you get from where you are today to where you want to go sometime in the future? And when is that? And so going out and driving your EBITDA up, driving your multiples up, understanding how you can influence the value of your business so you can cash out and go play the great golf courses of the world or sail the world single-handed or whatever it is you want to do. That's what your business is there for. The more you look at your business that way, the more you'll focus on things like benchmarking, dive into those numbers, why those numbers are where they are, and then put together a game plan for improving them. That'll help drive your earnings up, and it'll also increase your multiples.
All right. Everybody, thank you for your attention today.
Thanks, guys.